acompañarnos. Les pedimos que se preparen para tomar nota, participar y aprovechar máximo este encuentro. Y ahora sí, sin más demoras, damos paso al ponente de hoy, al señor Fabián Aruquipa. Es un profesional de idioma con más de 17 años de experiencia trabajando como educador y traductor, intérprete, y trabajando para el Ministerio de Asuntos Internacionales de Bolivia y para la Corte Internacional de Justicia también como traductor sin fronteras. Bueno, sin más nada que decir, un placer estar aquí con usted, señor Fabián, y puede comenzar. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. I'm gonna switch to English because that's the aim and the purpose of this lesson, English teaching. And first of all, thank you to UADN Prime Business School for the opportunity to offer my class with you. Thank you for the warm introduction and the kind words that you used. Above all, I am a user of language like you. And the purpose of today's lesson is very specific. It is detailed there. You registered, you are seeing this video because of this particular words, Japanese poetry forms, start your poetic journey. But those are very specific. In a very broad sense, what we will do here is explore our use of language for communication of poetry. I hope you enjoy it. And we're going to start with something a bit unusual. Uh, we have to. Before we do anything in poetry or in any other kind of work, I believe it is important to be present and to be aware. So, hence, I would like you to just relax, breathe, close your eyes if you want to, don't close them if you don't want to. Usually, it is best to have your hands, the palms of your hands on your thighs. But all I want you to do is just breathe, be present, be here. Consider you are a living unit who's here with all of us, sharing the same planet, sharing a language among many languages. And because this is all too important for what we're going to do, contemplation and observation. And all of us have the capacity and the quality to derive from the outer world with which I just invited you to be present in, to derive from that language which can be considered artistic or creative. Uh, that was very important to begin with. Now, it is important to, with this reflection, with this contemplation of being present, to remember, this is kind of a tip, the elimination of the subjective personal self. Uh, we, we will try to become channels of language in this exercise. And I think that's quite simple by doing what we just did, reflecting, connecting, knowing you're present among many other things. So that it's not just yourself, but the merge of all selves. Well, we'll start with something a bit boring. It's actually not the presentation here, because along with this important introduction about the self and being present, we have something quite important, a bit technical, which is the following. Wait a second, please, because I want us to go to a different file. There we go. The most important element, one of the most, I'm sorry for this, but it will be a blunt statement. One of the most important elements in poetry, perhaps the most important, is syllable, the syllable. I hope you can see my screen. I'm going to check that. Perfect. Yes, you can see my screen. Great. The syllable is probably the most important element in poetry. The syllable could be said, in your teacher's humble opinion, the syllable is to music. Um, the syllable, wait, I wrote it down. The syllable is to poetry what notes are to music. That's it. Syllables are to poetry what notes are to music. You make poems, and not only poems. I was speaking at the beginning of the broader sense of language. So all that we say, all that we read, language in general, starts with a syllable. A syllable, in case you don't know, is a unit of pronunciation that has one vowel sound. Vowel, two syllables. Vowel. Every word is composed of syllables. Water, water, two syllables. Beauty, emancipation, precision. On the basis of this small structure of sound, language is made. And in a broader sense, poetry is made. Made. Poetry is made. Five syllables. And particularly the form of poetry that we're going to study today. Here's a small example, but I want us to focus mainly on the syllable count and how syllables create rhythm. Wordless song array, voices echo from the back, the bus is empty. Wordless song array, voices echo from the back, the bus is empty. I have very small one syllable words there, but still you can see one not only of the qualities of haiku, but the qualities of poetry, and I again say of language in general. Rhythm, sound. Perfect. With this small technical introduction, which is quite important, we can now move on to our actual lesson. Thank you for your patience. Remember, be present. Consider syllables being present in every chunk of language that we formulate. Now, the lesson for today is the use of Japanese minimalist poetry forms to start our poetry journey. Let me explain that a bit by defining the scope. As you probably noticed, this lesson is developed for advanced level students. You have to have some level of reading, writing. However, we chose the poetry form of haiku and not a sonnet, a Shakespearean sonnet, for instance, because of its brevity and linguistic simplicity. Let me tie it down to the technical consideration a minute ago. It's simple in terms that we will have only 17 syllables. And you will see how simple that is in terms of how many words you will actually use. So it is aimed at advanced level students, but I am sure, and actually the purpose of teaching short minimalistic forms of poetry in my classes is to teach English. The purpose of this lesson is not for you to become a poet. I'm sure you are already, all of us. But the purpose of this lesson is to enhance and practice your language skills. That is why I began at the start of this lesson with a consideration of language, ample language, how we are all channels of it. So aside from all this technical poetic language we will see, and also the poetic objective of the lesson itself, consider this just as a simple opportunity for practicing your English skills. And along with your English skills, your language skills in general, and along with that, many of your brain functions and your brain activities, observation, contemplation, contrast, agreement, disagreement, and many other things that will be activated and that will be acting while we read and write our own poems. That is also part of the scope. The scope of today's lesson is to give you an introduction on this very simple linguistic form of poetry for you to use that framework and start your poetry journey if you want to, or simply keep on practicing your language skills in a more creative way. I hope you enjoy it. Uh, the purpose, we're going to start with the simplest and the most common, or say most common, but with one of the most common forms of Japanese forms, which is the haiku. This lesson is accompanied by many others, which I hopefully will be able to provide here, which address all of the other Japanese forms, like the tanka, the haiku, the haiga. But we'll start with this one, as this will be our framework for the rest of our. As I speak of starting and frameworks, I want to re-emphasize the two things that happened at the beginning. Be present, be reflective, be observant, and count syllables in language. Count syllables in language. Be present. Everything is made of this small pronunciation unit in our work. Good. So as you see in the screen, these forms that we will teach are not important only for poetic expression, but also for language learning. And they will allow us in their brevity and clarity also to practice and read, one more time. It will be easier to read haiku than starting with a note. So let's begin. Introduction. What is a haiku? A haiku is a short minimalist poem composed of 3 lines, 3 verses. There is a syllabic pattern. That means there are patterns of syllables in every line. And that is, you have 5 syllables in the first line, 7 syllables in the second line, and 5 syllables again in the third line. This creates not only a sound and rhythm pattern, which I like to teach like this, pam 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 pam. You will notice when we read the haiku that because of the syllable structure that we have, most of this sing this kind of rhythm song. 5, 7, 5. So that is an important thing, but not only in terms of sound, as I just made and exemplified, also in terms of the structure. Let me see one more time here. The haiku that we showed at the beginning to see the syllables. Look at the structure, the form, the shape, I mean, not without the words and the syllable count. It's like a small belly growing in the middle. And this is quite important also because it's not only the rhythm, wordless song array, voices echo from the back, the bass is empty. It's also that structure that is visible, like a small belly with the second line extending a bit farther than the first and third lines. So it is also a visible pattern. This is quite an integral, a quite comprehensive view of the haiku. So let's go back to our original presentation. Good. So important considerations about the haiku, aside from these technical foundations, which I just mentioned, 3 lines, 5, 7, 5. In the traditional haiku, they didn't have titles, but we're going to see, because we're going to address the contemporary haiku as well here, that is something that the contemporary Americans actually changed, and it helps you. You put a title and you already give the reader an introduction of what the haiku will be, and then you stab the reader with poetry, with a very short and clear, at the same way, and blunt expression of language, which is the haiku. No rhyme needed. This means that you don't need to rhyme the last words like is done most of the times. Well, you will find a word that rhymes with times. But most of the times I commit crimes and then I don't know. Huh? You don't do that in haiku. And this is quite important because most poetry, classical poetry, used to rhyme a lot. And we will see how contemporary American poets made a turn in adapting the haiku to the American tradition. So no rhyme needed. You don't need it. Brevity and clarity. Um, there is a quality in the Japanese haiku, which is called the kireji. It and it can be understood as a pause or a cut in the sentence. We're going to see an example in a second in the structure, but we don't do that in the English and Spanish haiku because what as we're seeing, what we're not studying the Japanese language here. We're not studying the Japanese haiku either. We are studying English language, and we will study the English-Japanese haiku tradition, where we adapt the haiku to our own English language. So what Americans did, because it was this phraseology was not possible, it comes from the Japanese. We use punctuation. We use separation of verses. Just where it stops. I don't want to go to the word file again. We're going to go back to another example to exemplify that. But aside from this technical structure, which they seem a bit, we could say there are five main ones. But if you compare this with other kinds of poetry, the structure and the elements are a lot more, and we could even make this more complex. But I want us to focus on this. 3-line poem, 575 syllables. That's it. Brevity, clarity. Asides, together with these technical foundations, there are these subjective foundations which we will also address and have to do with what we did at the beginning. The haiku is filled with nature contemplation and nature observation. Nature is not just a thing, a background, an element there. It is part of everything in the haiku. It is a presence, as we are. There is contemplation. You will see in the examples that most of these are contemplatory, observatory ideas, even the contemporary ones. It's like someone watching a river flowing, and you say, river flowing down the path, dragging rocks and shoes, something of the sort. Imagery. This is very important because it includes the use of vivid images, river flowing, dragging down rocks and shoes. Can you see? I hope you can. River flowing, dragging down rocks and shoes. I think it's quite simple, you see, and it is quite simple also because of the brevity. If it were longer and we'd have to describe the river and the shoe, why are there shoes? But we don't need to do that. We have 5 syllables, and we already have evocative images. There is a river that's dragging rocks and shoes. Everybody can see that. Let me make a parenthesis here. This is an example of also of how accessible reading the haiku is for you to start not only your poetic journey, but also your enhancement of English language. Read more haiku more often, and you will see, because it's so simple, the structures, the words, the language, and at the same time, you will learn new words, new grammatical functions, etc. It's a very good way to practice. Another important element aside from the contemplation, nature, and the images that we provide is the contrast. Most of the things, this is a general thing, most of poetic language, most of poetry, humble personal opinion, is made upon contrast. There is poetry in things because there is contrast, because there is love and war, because there is hate, but at the same time there is a desire to keep the other safe, because there is nature, and at the same time there is destruction of the same for the sake of progress or for the preservation of other natural environments. And all of these things, if we capture them, if we capture that contrast, we can land on haiku as well. I will show you an example. It will be it will be clearer once we see more examples. And finally, memory and feeling. But again, this is not the subjective self, right? In poetry, it's never the person talking. And generally in literature, another parenthesis, there is the poetic voice. And the poetic voice is made of language. It is not made of emotion. It is not made of my perception. The river is not my river. The shoes are not my shoes. That river, as just happened in this lesson, flowed from language. It came out just through language. An interpretation of language, this memory and this feeling that is conveyed in poetry pertains only to language. It's not Matsuo Basho or the poets that we're going to read. It's language speaking to us. So there is memory and feeling. There are hidden and implied emotions, but these are universal because it's not me, it's not you talking, it's language flowing. Perfect. We'll take a look at them one more time before we start reading them. This is the most important part, perhaps, because we will start by the classical examples of haiku, and we will see how all of these two sides, the technical and subjective sides, interact and form. We'll start by a haiku with Kobayashi Isha. I don't know how, if there are people I can ask to participate. This is being recorded, and if there's, I see some people. Let's do this very quickly. If anyone would like to read, raise your hand, and if not, I will just continue with the lesson. I'll give it a 5-syllable count. Mm, 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 mm. Perfect, thank you. Let me go on then. Classical. Oh, wait. Are we still seeing the screen? Perfect. Yes, we are. So, Kobayashi is even on New Year's, it stands just as it is, my tumble-town house. 3 lines, syllable count, even on New Year's. 5. It stands just as it is. 5 to 6, my tumble-down house. 5. This is a translation of the original Japanese. Hence, the first consideration. I told you a minute ago that it is composed of syllable count of 5, 7, and 5. But as language itself, this is not a straight jacket that you cannot leave. This is actually just a framework. And in the examples we will see how in translation and in the preservation of meaning also. Because when you're writing your own haiku, you will see, well, I have 4 syllables, but this is what I want to say. You can use that. You can do that. It is absolutely possible. The idea is just to work on the general framework. How is this a common classical haiku? There is a season, there is a nature element on New Year's, on New Year's Eve, actually, New Year's. And there is this contemplatory mood. It stands just as it is, my tumble down house. There seems to be lots of honesty. There is this element of imagery that I mentioned a minute ago. You know, you don't need much information to see a person describing his house. This is another one, more aligned with the syllable count, another classical one. Matsuo Basho. He's actually set to be the one to consolidate the haiku. An all silent pond, a frog jumps into the pond, splash, silence again. Let's stop here a minute. First of all, it's quite obvious and the image, the visual thing. Second, you can see the structure I mentioned a minute ago. The 5-7-5 structure gives you this sort of belly, even visible structure. And the rhythm, sound, Null, silent pound, frog jumps into the pound, splash, silence again. But in terms of the subjective elements, um, there is nature. There is nature being part of the whole thing. An all silent pond and the frog jumps into the pond. And there is this thing I mentioned a minute ago, contrast. Look at how contrast is so strong in this poem. First, there is a splash and silence again. And one more time, look at how it is done in just 5 syllables. Splash, silence again. So much happening in that simple line. My own personal contribution. Um, First autumn morning, the mirror shows my father an onion. This is an example of how I didn't want to go for 5 syllables. I could have done. I'm sure if you're practicing, if you want to practice the structure, you can go ahead and do it. But I thought that for the meaning of this poem, that it needed to be an onion and nothing more. Uh, we will not judge whether it is a good or bad poem, but we will see the elements, the element of nature, the element of contemplation, the element of contrast, how, and the element of images, right? How is a father an onion? How are you looking at at the mirror, a father or your father, an intern, an onion? What is the meaning of the onion? How many words do we have here? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 words. And we have first autumn, 5, then mirror, shows my father, 7, and onion, 3. So we have around less than 20 syllables and less than 15 words. And in all this, there are already so many questions. This is the beauty of the haiku, and I hope we are getting it. Another, Masaoka Shiki. This one also, look at how the structure visibly is not the same belly that we have here, because it's a translation as well. But look at the essence of the haiku. After killing a spider, how lonely I feel in the cold of night. There is nature, there's a subjective self, interacting with nature. You can see what's going on. There are images. There is so much going on. In 3 lines, after killing a spider, I feel lonely in the cold night. But you shouldn't have killed it, but I had to kill it. This is something also that it should be brought to mind. And by the way, the translator could have moved this word down here so that there is the belly, so that there are syllables, more syllables in the second line. But they didn't want to, because again, aside from the structure, the technical structure we spoke of at the beginning, 575, the objective is all of these subjective meanings that are conveyed in the haiku. Natsume Soseki, plum flower temple, voices rise from the foothills, homecoming. I will stop interfering the instruction, the penetration of language through the haiku with explanations, because they are very simple. Observation, imageries, contrast, syllable count, we have already addressed them. Let's stop at them. Plum flower temple, voices rise from the foothills. A crow has flown, swaying in the evening sun. A leafless tree. A leafless tree. The crow has flown, swaying in the evening sun. A leafless tree. I don't know about you, but I feel there. You see, the images, the language is evocative. And this brings to mind another sort of contemplation, this small syllable count haiku. You have probably heard it or have seen it. I don't recall it very well, the reference, but a leaf, the leaf of a tree flies, and you don't know if it's a leaf or a butterfly or the other way around. If a butterfly, if you see a butterfly flying, then see the trees in autumn, see the butterfly or a leaf falling. Contrast, nature, contrast is so important. Now, in this example, as you can see, all of these examples, actually, the classical, they are simple, blunt considerations, contemplations. 575. No titles, no rhymes, as we said a minute ago. Something happens with the contemporary tradition, with the American haiku, where there is a movement before or along with the modernist poets in the United States and the modernist poetry movement, where the poets incorporate particularly the imagery, this quality of presenting vivid images. And the changing point, the turning point is Ezra Pound's of the metro. It's not really a haiku, it has 2 lines, but it takes the haiku tradition. In the station of the metro, the apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals of wet black. Consideration number 1, they add a title in a station of the metro. What does the title do? It, without taking you syllables, because it is an open, I told you, it's not a straight jacket, but but it is, there are rules. It's 575. You can make it 475, but if you want for to essence, but those are the rules. The title helps you to include more language and context without using those valuable syllables. Because consider the following: all of these heavy things, these blunt things, plum flower temple, voices rise from the foothills, homecoming. Everything is happening in very small chunks of language, in just a few words, in just a few syllables. So we don't want to add more words. The fewer, the better. That's where the title comes in. The title will help you put that introduction. And look at how it interacts here. It tells us where to look in a station of the metro. And then it gives us a contemplatory, contrasting, vivid image. The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bowl. And the strongest thing here, if you allow me, is the combination, the merge. This is also a turning point because right here we have frogs and leaves and spiders and people, all nature, 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 nature. Something happens in the contemporary era, which is all of this technology living in the cities. And Mr. Ezra Pound, regardless of his personal virtues or fails, merges the two of them. The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black ball. So there is a natural element in something so mundane as a metro, in the faces of a metro. I hope you're following. I hope I'm not bothering you, getting you too bored. But let's continue seeing the next one. Tanya Foster. Tanya Foster is a even more contemporary. Along with Mr. Ezra Pound, there is a whole movement with, for example, Hilda Doolittle. But she's not here but we're going to make reference her because her poems are strong in images. You know, petals become gems down a river. Leaves become bugs. Flowers being dragged by a river are bodies. To us in the present time, this may not sound so, surprising, but back then, it was a very important thing. The inclusion of these images in poetry and in such a direct way. Tanya Foster is more contemporary. Miss Tonya Foster is an Afro-American, and she gives us this, if you ask me, strong haiku. Late night commercials. We talk like urgent auctions in uncrowded rooms. In here, we see a bit more of a mundane element, of the element of the city of television, late night commercials. We talk like urgent auctions in uncrowded rooms. But again, the the actions, the elements of haiku are there. A particular moment, a contemplation, late night. Uh, Nature, however, is turned. The elemental, the essential things here are our everyday things. It seems like someone watching TV. Yet there is essence. Late night commercials would talk like urgent auctions, in uncrowded rooms. Baffling. Another by Tonya Foster. He's asleep. She can't fall to a nap that won't keep Orantic. Same structure, slightly shorter syllable count because the author wanted to preserve it. But the essence, the power, the simplicity, the strength of haiku is there. He's asleep. She can't fall to a nap that won't keep Orantic. Rhythm as well. And one more time, look at the simplicity. I'm sure you are understanding, regardless of being in the advanced level, intermediate level. If you show this text to a beginner level, they will also understand, maybe not auctions, right? But the rest, late night commercials. We talk like urgent auctions in uncrowded rooms. Even a child would understand a bit of it. And it's poetry. And you can then produce your own poem, your own consideration with the same exercise we did at the beginning. Let's continue before we go there. Wendy Cope. This is amazing. Um, this one by Foster doesn't have a title. Miss Cope, like Mr. Ezra Pound, introduces a title. And the title does what I told you a minute ago, which is give the reader a general context and save many words so that you can keep your haiku with its exact syllable count. Let's look at it. It's beautiful. Looking out of the back bedroom window without my glasses. What's that amazing new lemon yellow flower? Oh yes, a football. What's that amazing new lemon yellow flower? Oh yes, looking out the back bedroom without my glasses. In a station in the metro, the apparition of these faces in the crowd, wet petals on wet black faces are petals. Looking out at the back bedroom window without my glasses. What's that amazing new lemon yellow flower? Oh yes, a football. Do you see how there is a similarity but also a contrasting difference? In a station in the metro, the faces, the mundane element becomes natural. The apparition of these faces in the crowd are petals on wet black. But in this one, it's funny, but I think it's frustrating. What's that amazing? New lemon yellow flower. Gosh, it must have looked like a lemon, you know? There is the nature there. But then comes the mundane. Oh yes, it's a football. Contrast. Small chunks of language, syllables, helped by a title. Same contemplation, the same considerations, the same stroke to the reader. And again, the same simplicity for our English practice, for your English reading and learning. Some more. Another haiku by Miss Wendy Cope. For this part of the lesson, unless there are any questions, we will give 5 syllables for questions. Unless there are any questions, we're going to do a reading exercise on. I'm gonna read them, and whenever I feel, as you see, this gets me excited at times. Whenever I feel like commenting, I will comment, but I will try not to, because we have already addressed most of the elements, the important elements, the technical and the subjective elements as well. Let's recap: 5, 7, 5 syllables, a small structure, a belly in the structure. There is rhythm, there is sound, there is music, there is no rhyme. Contemporary guys put a title. You can put a title, you cannot put a title if you don't want to. Subjective side, observation, contemplation, reflection, contrast. Haiku by Wendy Cope. Wait, questions? Are there any questions? Questions? No questions. Very well. A perfect white wine is sharp, sweet, and cold as this birdsong winter. I have to comment, I'm sorry. Here, in our first Wendy Cope example, there is this frustrating mechanism of the lemon, the new lemon yellow, a natural element turning into something bluntly mundane, football. In this other, there is this not only, I would say, not only mundane, but also kind of snob, rich people habit consideration, you know, white wine, perfect white wine, which turns into something natural, like in the Ezra Pound poem. A perfect white wine is sharp, sweet, cold, as this birdsong winter. My God. Wine, but not any wine. White, perfect, sharp, sweet, and cold, like a bird song. Not any bird song, a bird song in winter. Do you see the contrast and the strength in 3 lines, in words that anyone can understand? Perfect white wine. Show me an intermediate student who could not understand this. Is a sharp, sweet, and cold as is sharp, sweet, and cold as this. All of these adjectives you know from the beginner level. Birdsong winter. This small analysis I just made, my friends, is my invitation for you to explore haiku in English. As an English tool, we are doing this for reading, for thinking, for contemplating, reflecting, but also for you to write. Look at how simple the language is. Take your pen and think of words that have 5 syllables or 2 words, like this woman just did, a perfect white wine. Actually, it's more than 5 syllables, right? A perfect white wine, 6. But think, crown of spines, cat dragging down the carpet, mother's calling. I invite you to attempt your own haiku with this. Oh, and this is more personal because I will invite you further. We will continue reading and analyzing in this more silent mode now, uh, with the caveat that these are your teacher's examples. Some of these were written with our students in other classes. My students gave me feedback and we created this for the class. But these are mainly written for you, again, as invitations. Morning. Empty coffee cup. The day begins again. Silent promises. Empty coffee cup. The day begins again. Silent promises. Empty coffee cup. The day begins again. Silent promises. TV. Cold screen glows. A single bird crosses the gray sky. Job search. Overqualified, but needy fire burns all. Small fishbowl. Parenthesis. Notice how in these more contemporary haiku examples, the simplicity of language and the use of common words sometimes gives it a surrealistic tone. Where are you? The onion poem. In this use of contemporary language and simple words, sometimes there comes words in this contrast exercise as well, where there is nature and there is the mundane. Um, there is this, even I would say, surrealistic element. First autumn morning, the mirror shows my father an onion. Overqualified but needy fire burns all. Small fishbowl. It becomes more complex if you want to really, what is it saying? Let's start with the structure. Overqualified but needy, fire burns all. Small fishbowl. Untitled. Time is a dog searching for a lost shelter. Dry mouth full of sun. Time is a dog searching for a lost shelter. Dry mouth full of sun. Time is a dog searching for a lost shelter. Dry mouth full of sun. A dry mouth full of sun. A frog jumps into the pond. Splash. Silence. Reflection. Throat gaze mirrored through drifts. Something dying. National flag. National emblem. Full of light and color. Drop of blood. I'll stop in this to mention one more time contrast. Um, I mentioned in the beginning that there was this Japanese element that we really don't use in the contemporary times, which is the ireji. In Japanese, it happens because of the language that they have. But for us, for American language users, For English, we don't need that. What we do is contrast, cutting contrast, stopping the sentence where we want to stop, stopping the verse where we want to stop, and look at how it creates a contrasting structures. Throat gaze, mirror through drafts, something dying. And even more so in this other, which seems quite beautiful at the beginning. It's nice. It's like the lemon in Wendy Cope. National emblem, full of light and color. Drop of blood. Many of our countries have the color red in our flags. And I think in most of the times it symbolizes blood. How does it relate to the poem? How does light and color contrast with blood? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 words. My beautiful people. 10 words. 17 syllables. A whole story being told. So we saw these contemporary examples written for you to incite you, to invite you to see its simplicity, the simplicity of haiku, the simplicity of using common language, common words in all this exercise that, again, I'm telling you, it's an exercise not just for a poet. Actual poets will disagree with me, but everyone is a poet. What your mother tells you is a poet, is a poem, sorry. When she tells you to wear a heavy coat and you don't do it, and you regret it, and you think of her in the cold winter, there's a haiku. It's just a matter of putting it in words, and particularly in putting it in the structure 575. Winter advice. Mother calls and needed. I regret. Something of the sort. The class has this introductory objective, this main purpose of showing us the haiku, the structure, the elements of it, reading some, not only the classical examples, but also the contemporary examples which we just addressed. But also the objective is for you to start and write your own haiku. This is a recorded lesson, and although we have participants in it, it will not be productive to design because it's a lesson, it's not a workshop. If it had been a workshop, you can rest assured that I would have talked a lot less. But it is not a workshop, it is a lesson. And all I can do is leave you with tools, as the warm introduction by you at the Prime University Business School told us. You will receive these slides. And along with these slides, some other complementary material, reading material. I will try to share the Tonya Foster book, for instance. She has a book of full haiku, contemporary haiku. And there are many authors who have been trying to do that as well. You may be the next. To write your own haiku, consider the same thing we did at the beginning. Be present. And you don't need to be in the forest. You don't need to be at a river. You don't need to be watching a pond and a frog jumping in it. It's happening right here in your own environment. Be present, reflect, think, contemplate, and let language fall. But as it falls, give it a structure. Count 5 sounds. Pam, 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 pam. Never my life has seen the rhetorical sides of a cat mewing. You see, you let language, it's like playing Tetris. You let language flow, but it has to fit in 5 syllables, 7 and 5 more. And you will see how your own mind, our own minds are already working in poetic language, poetic structured language. So be present, contemplate, observe, let nature and nature as a whole, like television, things that are part of it as well. We human beings are part of it as well, unfortunately. The material elements, let everything flow into you, fall into the pattern, keep it simple, keep it real, and share wherever you want, however you want. It will be not only a beautiful, creative, accessible work, but again, a work that shows your English enhancement, the enhancement of your English use, the use of English language. My dear friends, some quick takeaways, the recap. The haiku is short, it's rich in images, it is reflective, contemplatory, it has lots of contrast. The structure allows you to be creative. This simple 5-7-5 structure allows you to let the language flow and you put it in that structure. Nature and memory are very important elements. It allows you to explore both sides. Poetry, if you like creative and literary works, and also your language enhancement, your language learning. Read more haiku, write more haiku. The next lessons, for example, include the haiban. The haiban is a piece of prose, a long piece of prose like a paragraph, and a haiku below. This is something we will see in a different lesson. But it is also an invitation for you to begin writing, continue writing, let language flow through you. Some references. I teach this lesson, which kindly to the business school has been provided to you and will be available. And hopefully we will keep on providing you more lessons through this business school. But there is also other institutions like the Burlington Writers Workshop that has haiku workshops and some reading materials, the haiku handbook or the haiku in English, which is how precisely will tell us a story, which I did very briefly and fast about how we have appropriated, so to speak, in a good way and adapted the haiku tradition into the English language to do what we just did, madams and sirs, to talk about poetry, to read about poetry, to read poems, and to hopefully write your own. We're nearing the end of the class. Encouragement. I have a couple of two final verses for you, which I hope are encouraging. The first one is encouragement, entitled such. Encouragement. Voices remain away in the distance, cheering, loving you. And happy haiku, no? Although you could even point to contrast, right? Voices remain away in the distance. But what are they saying? They're loving you. They're cheering you. Voices remain away in the distance, cheering, loving you. Rhythm and pattern. Voices remain away in the distance, cheering, loving you. 575. Last. This one doesn't have a title. This one has a title. The other doesn't have a title. You can use a title. You can not use a title if you don't want to. You can put a title after you write the haiku. The title is an incorporation of contemporary poets, right? All of us here, looking back on our steps, playing lava floor. The tone is different, huh? Uh, one would say, all of us, unity, all of us here, looking back on our steps, playing lava floor. I don't know if you're familiar with it. The floor is made of lava, and it's kind of a tricky, dangerous game, right? If you touch lava, you die. all of us here, looking back on our steps, playing lava floor. Is life, is looking back on your steps any comparable to playing lava floor? My kind participants and students, thank you very much. Thank you to UADEN Prime University and American Business School that offers an array, a huge array of subjects. And one of those is language learning. And they have allowed us to do language learning through creativity, which is something very important to do. I hope the lesson was good to you. I hope you can get takeaways for your own creative path and journey. And I'll wait if you have any questions. I wrote a haiku before the lesson. What do you think about this one to say goodbye? As I write to the organizer to tell him that we have to close this now. Winter coat hung like drunken uncle. Vantage point. Winter coat hung like drunken uncle. Vantage point. Winter coat hung like drunken uncle. Vantage point. Oh yes, of course. Thank you, Mister. There is a question written in the chat as to whether the haiku also exists in Spanish. Yes, as a matter of fact, they are a very good way to also start your Spanish learning. Many of my students who are learning Spanish, we also use the haiku because it is a very short form for any language to learn. And although it is not as common or as famous, I told you, the Americans adapted and adopted the haiku tradition. It's part of the American poetry now. So much so that we call this American haiku, American English haiku. But that didn't really happen with the Spanish haiku. There are authors who have attempted them, but it's not very common. There are not many authors who have like books or huge uh, publications with them. It's more of an English tradition, and that's again one of its important pieces of or points of importance, that it is for English language learners or writers or readers. Thank you for the question. I have some very ugly things here as we get clearance, because we can end the class now. And I would actually like you to go ahead with the mind fresh, with the mind, the heart, the language fresh, so that you are able to take the best of it. But here, I'm on the chat. I'm writing a Spanish haiku to say goodbye. Tanta intimidad en vano caen las hojas, de papel la vida. Thank you so much for being here. And if you are not here, if you are watching the recording of this video on YouTube or any other media, this is an invitation one more time. It is your opportunity to keep reading and writing through a very short form. I'm available with the UAD and Business School, so you can reach out to us for further work. Goodbye.
Bueno, muchas gracias, profesor. Excelente su clase. Placer disfrutar de su clase. Me interesó mucho el tema de los haiku. Me parece que es una herramienta excelente para las personas que están aprendiendo el idioma. no lo había visto de esa manera, pero como lo planteó aquí en el webinar, me encantó cómo lo planteó para eso, para utilizarlo para aprender nuevos idiomas. De nuevo, muchas gracias por su tiempo y muchas gracias por la enseñanza que nos dio hoy. Hasta luego, desde aquí, desde Uaden Prime.
Muchas gracias.